Okay, so let's imagine that we have a uniform magnetic field pointing everywhere out of the page. So here are the tips of arrows representing the magnetic field, and the magnitude of the magnetic field is B naught, so it's pointing out of the page. Let's find, let's say we have a particle of charge Q naught. So, and we're going to launch this particle in the magnetic field, and we want to launch it such that we get the maximum magnetic force. So, what direction should we launch the particle in to get the maximum magnetic force? Well, we want this expression to have the maximum possible value. Right, F is equal to Q V cross B. And so we want V and B to be perpendicular to each other, because that will give us the maximum force. So perpendicular means any direction in the plane of the sheet of paper. Right, so I can launch the particle that way, and I would get a maximum magnetic force, but I could launch the particle that way. I could launch the particle in between those two directions. I could launch it there, that way, or in between. Could launch it to the left or in between left and down, and so on. And what you realize is that any direction in the plane, right? So V has can be any direction in the plane. In the plane of the paper. So that will give us the maximum magnetic force. And what is the magnitude of that maximum magnetic force? Well, it would be the magnitude of the charge, which is Q naught, the magnitude of the velocity, which we haven't specified, but let's say we launch it with a speed V naught, in which case we have Q naught V naught, and the magnitude of the magnetic field, which is B naught, times the sine of the angle between velocity and magnetic field. But any of these red directions, as we can see, are perpendicular to the direction out of the page, and so we get that the sine of the angle between the two is 1, and so that's the maximum magnetic force. Call it FB. So now let's think of how we would launch this particle for it to have 0 magnetic force, right? So FB is 0 if the velocity and the magnetic field are aligned, so, or anti-aligned. So that's one possibility. And the other possibility is, let's launch it opposite the direction of the magnetic field. We have something like that. So in this case, this means that V is into or out of the page. Right? Those are the two directions that satisfy these conditions, and in that case, the magnetic force would be 0.